has elapsed. We now come to the third oral question. Baroness Clark of Kilwinning.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
Baroness Williams.
My Lords, the inquiry's investigations are independent of the Home Office, and I welcome the commencement of its evidential hearings in November of last year. The Department maintains regular liaison with the inquiry on sponsorship issues such as progress and expenditure. We remain of the view that it is important for the inquiry to report as soon as practicable, as is set out in the inquiry's terms of reference.
Thank the Minister for that answer. As she is aware, one of the reasons that the inquiry was established was that a number of women had dishonestly become involved with undercover police officers in quite an abusive way, some of them indeed having children. One of the calls from many of the participants in the inquiry is that the inquiry should be public and should be live streamed. And one of the reasons for that is that it's believed that there may be many more women who have dishonestly been treated in this way. Indeed, there may be more children whose fathers are undercover police officers. Would the Minister look at this issue of the live streaming of the inquiry and how we make this inquiry public so that the images and the names of the undercover police officers are more available so that activists can look to see whether they were impacted in some way?
Well, to start with the last question that the Noble Lady asked, in terms of publication of a list, I think the inquiry chair has already opined on that, and she'll know his comment on that. I totally understand her point about women being involved with undercover police, some of them getting pregnant and having children. I think in terms of televising proceedings, it would be a matter for her to go to the inquiry chair to request that. Of course, the inquiry is independent of government.
Lord Morris of Aberavon.
My Lords, what is the cost to date of the inquiry, and is there a target date for its report, since it is acquiring the aura of the Savile inquiry? How many immunities have been granted by the Attorney General? Since it has been said that the legitimacy of the inquiry is bound up with the full cooperation of its participants, is this diminishing?
Well, the cost is to date is £36.2 million. In terms of when it is due to finish, the report to the Home Secretary is due before the end of 2023.
Lord Mackay of Clashfern.
My Lords, I would like to ask my noble friend whether there is any mechanism to ensure that an inquiry as important as this will report in a reasonable time.
My noble friend makes a very pertinent point, because of course some of the inquiry goes back to 1968, and so timeliness is very important. And as a sponsor department of a statutory inquiry, both the Home Secretary and the Permanent Secretary have sponsorship responsibilities which are set out in the inquiry's management statement. I have personally engaged with the Chair in my capacity as sponsor to discuss progress of the inquiry and stress the importance of learning lessons promptly.
Lord Paddock.
My Lords, given the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Criminal Conduct Act was recently passed by this House with Labour and Conservative Party support, giving the police the ability to give CHIS participating in protests immunity from prosecution, and with no specific prohibition on CHIS acting as agent provocateur, what reassurance can the Minister give to the House that police CHIS were not involved in recent protests against the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill?
Well, what I can tell the Noble Lord is that HMIC FRS published a report just last month, actually, on policing protests. And the report concluded, and I'll quote, "No use of undercover officers in protest policing." This appears proportionate to the nature of criminality inherent in protest generally, and it makes only brief reference to the ongoing undercover police inquiry.
Baroness Jones of Malscombe.
My Lords, the Chair of the Inquiry has ruled that the Special Branch Registry files, which could give more information about the work of undercover officers, will not be part of the inquiry. Now, that means that the truth is going to be very filtered, which makes it very hard for core participants who feel that they're not going to get justice. Would the Noble Lady, the Minister, agree to a meeting between me and perhaps a member of each of the opposition parties to discuss the major flaws in the inquiry and why the core participants are so upset?
Well, I said to the Noble Lady just before questions that I would look into what I could and couldn't do, because of course the inquiry is independent, rightly so. Parliament would expect it to be independent and therefore would not expect interference from the sponsoring minister, but I will take back her point.
Can the government give an assurance that following the conclusion of the Mitting inquiry, any people who were actively spied upon by the police, including individuals who may have been tricked into intimate relationships with undercover officers, will be made aware of what occurred and will not be denied access to justice?
Well, my Lords, I'm sure that the rationale would not be to deny people access to justice. Clearly, the revelation of any names would be a matter for the chairman and what is an independent inquiry.
Lord Moylan.
My Lords, the inquiry was set up in 2015. Over 5 years passed before opening statements were delivered. 90 staff are directly engaged. As my noble friend has said, the cost so far exceeds 36 million, but that excludes very considerable expenditure by police forces responding to the inquiry. I'd estimate that the total cost of the inquiry to the public purse, by the time it reports well into the current decade, will be in excess of £100 million. Can my noble friend, the Minister, tell me if that is a reasonable forecast that the Department is budgeting for?
Well, I'm not sure whether it is a reasonable forecast, but what I can say is, from my noble friend's points, is that the inquiry needs to deliberate promptly and with proper eye on its use of public funds in order to do so.
Baroness Ritchie of Downpatrick.
My Lords, could the Noble Lady the Minister confirm what is the direct role of the inquiry in terms of undercover policing with other police forces since the infiltration took place into organisations with a UK-wide reach?
Well, I'm assuming that Noble Lady is probably referring to Northern Ireland. And I think it's probably at this point inappropriate to comment on that while judicial proceedings are ongoing.
Lord Mann.
An inquiry cannot request files where it doesn't know the existence of them. Can we be assured that there are no files within the Home Office that have not been sought out and retrieved and provided to the inquiry?
If the Home Office is asked for files, and files which it has, it will most certainly be, it would have to provide them to the inquiry.
My Lords, all supplementary questions have been asked. We now move to